Walter was a man of routines. At 72, his life revolved around the simple, beautiful things. The scent of damp earth in his garden, the warmth of the sun on his face, and the joyful chaos of his grandson, Sam. He was a man who took immense pride in his clean living, believing that a tidy life led to a clear mind. But lately, an invisible wall had begun to form between him and the people he cherished, a silent symptom he couldn't yet name. Walter's hands, gnarled and strong, told the story of a lifetime spent tending to his garden, a vibrant tapestry of roses, herbs, and vegetables. His morning ritual was a precise and orderly one. He'd wake with the sun, take a brisk walk through his yard to greet his plants, and then retreat inside for a meticulous shower. He scrubbed every inch of his body with a gentle, scented soap, a habit he had maintained for decades. His home was always aired out, filled with the fresh scent of his garden and the clean fragrance of his laundry. He believed that his spotless existence was a testament to his character. His greatest joy, however, was his grandson, Sam. At 6, Sam was a ball of boundless energy who used to launch himself into Walter's arms the moment he arrived. The boy would cling to his grandfather, burying his face in his chest, a hug that felt like a reward for a well-lived life. But over the last few months, Walter had noticed a subtle shift. The enthusiastic hugs were a little less spontaneous. Sam would still say hello, but his hug was now a quick peck on the cheek rather than a full embrace. He would often linger near his mother, his gaze distant. The change wasn't just with Sam. His daughter-in-law, Lisa, always seemed to have a pretext for opening a window whenever she was in his study. "It's getting a little stuffy in here, Dad," she would say with a kind smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Walter would agree, but inside, a quiet confusion brewed. He lived a spotlessly clean life. He showered daily. Why did he feel like he was being subtly, politely pushed away? This invisible wall, this quiet distance, was a symptom he couldn't name. He chalked it up to Sam getting older and less cuddly. He reasoned that Lisa just liked fresh air. He told himself these things, but in the quiet of his study, with the window ajar and the sun streaming in, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something. A part of him knew that a truth, a painful, unspoken truth, was hiding just out of his reach. The truth, when it came, was not a shout but a whisper. One afternoon, Walter's son, Mark, brought a few friends home to see his father's famous garden. As Walter proudly walked them through the rows of blooming hydrangeas, he overheard one of the young men say to another, "Man, it's beautiful, but do you smell that? The old guy's smell is pretty strong." The words hit Walter like a physical blow. He froze, the warmth of the sun suddenly feeling cold against his skin. The shame was immediate and overwhelming. All his life, he had been a man of dignity and self-respect, who believed that if you did things right, you would be respected in return. But the truth was that his pride in his cleanliness was an illusion. It didn't matter how often he bathed or how spotless his home was. There was a part of himself, a fundamental change that came with age, that he had no control over and was now alienating the people he loved. From that day on, Walter began to withdraw. He made excuses to stay in his room when Mark and his family visited. He told Sam he was tired and couldn't play outside. He saw the hurt in his grandson's eyes, the worried glances from Lisa, and the quiet sadness of his son. He was trapped in a prison of his own making, a prison built of shame and a secret he was afraid to confront. He had become a stranger in his own home. He felt the loneliness acutely, a deep ache in his chest. He was surrounded by love, but he was choosing to be apart from it. The worst part was that he knew he was the one causing the distance, but he had no idea how to fix it. He tried dousing himself in cologne, but the scent seemed to mingle with the other odor, creating a sickly, heavy perfume that only seemed to make the problem worse. He was desperate, but he was also resigned. He believed this was simply his fate, the lonely, smelly old man. Walter's descent into isolation was not unnoticed. His old friend, Dr. Henry, a retired geriatric specialist, came by one day for a visit. Dr. Henry didn't ask about Walter's health or his garden. He asked about his spirit. "You've been a ghost lately, Walter," he said gently, sitting across from him in the study. Walter sighed, ready with his usual excuse about being tired, but Dr. Henry stopped him. "Let me tell you a secret that no one ever tells a senior. It's not your fault. Dr. Henry then explained a concept that Walter had never heard before. He spoke of noninol, a compound in the body that naturally increases with age, particularly after 60. It's an oxidized fatty acid that gives off a distinct scent, one that the person themselves is almost entirely unable to detect. Dr. Henry explained that it wasn't about being dirty, it was about a fundamental shift in the body's chemistry. Your sweat changes, your skin's oil production shifts, and your body's natural cleaning systems slow down. This is not a moral failing, Walter. It's just biology. The explanation was a revelation. Walter listened, mesmerized, as Dr. Henry continued. Most people don't know about noninol. Families are too afraid to bring it up. So, the senior feels confused and isolated, and the family feels like they're being rude. But the most beautiful thing is that you don't have to accept it. You can change. The doctor then shared a few simple, life-changing tips. He spoke not of expensive products or complex procedures, but of small, daily habits that Walter could implement immediately. A seed of hope, long dormant, began to sprout in Walter's heart. He realized that for weeks he had been a victim of his own ignorance. He hadn't been an outcast. He had simply been uninformed. The problem wasn't an insurmountable, unchangeable part of who he was. It was a biological symptom with a known solution. The sadness he had carried began to lift, replaced by a deep sense of relief and a newfound determination to reclaim his life. The very next morning, Walter began his new routine. Dr. Henry had called it the ritual of rejuvenation. The first step was to change his approach to hydration. He had always drunk water, but now he was intentional about it. He placed a glass of warm water by his bed, drinking it the moment he woke up. Throughout the day, he aimed for 6 glasses, a conscious effort to flush out toxins and keep his body's systems moving smoothly. It was a simple act, but it made him feel purposeful, like he was actively working toward a goal. The second step was to re-engage with the world through gentle movement. Dr. Henry hadn't prescribed a strenuous workout, just a 20-minute walk in the mild morning sun. Walter returned to his garden, not just for a quick inspection, but for a slow, meandering stroll. The sun on his face felt like a forgotten luxury, and the light perspiration he felt was a welcome sensation, a sign that his body was working again. He realized that for too long, he had seen exercise as a chore. But now it was a part of his healing process, a way of reconnecting with his body and the world around him. The third pillar of his new routine was the shower. He had always bathed daily, but now he understood that how you bathe was just as important as the act itself. He turned the temperature down, a warm, not scalding, flow of water that didn't strip his skin of its natural oils. He used a mild, unscented soap and focused on a gentle, but thorough, clean. This simple adjustment was a powerful metaphor for his entire journey. It wasn't about adding more, but about changing his approach. As the days turned into a week, Walter began to feel a profound change. It wasn't just the physical sensation of cleanliness, it was the psychological shift. He was no longer a passive victim of his age. He was a proactive participant in his own well-being. He was learning to listen to his body in a new way, understanding its needs and responding with care. He was reclaiming his body, his mind, and his spirit, one small, deliberate step at a time. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Henry explained that while Walter's new daily habits were crucial, they weren't the whole answer. There were 3 specific areas that most people, especially seniors, tended to miss, and these were the primary culprits for the persistence. It was a revelation. For all his meticulousness, Walter had been skimming over the spots that needed the most attention. He listened intently as Dr. Henry described these crucial areas that held the key to unlocking his freedom. The first spot was the skin folds. Walter had always focused on the broad surfaces of his body, but he had never truly considered the hidden creases that trapped sweat and bred bacteria. He learned to pay meticulous attention to his neck, behind his ears, his armpits, under the folds of his belly, and behind his knees. He used a soft cloth to gently scrub these areas, and he was amazed at how easily they had been neglected during his showers. The simple act felt like uncovering a secret, and he realized with a jolt how much his old routine had missed. The second area was the hairy spots. Walter had a thick head of hair and a modest amount of chest hair. He had always shampooed his hair, but he had never truly massaged his scalp. Now, he took the time to work the shampoo in with his fingertips, feeling the oils and dead skin cells lift away. He realized that his scalp, a place he had never considered, was a prime source of the odor. He also made sure to properly lather his chest and any other body hair, a step he had previously just let the soap run over. He began to feel a deeper level of clean than he had ever known. The third and most neglected area was his feet and the spaces between his toes. Walter had always washed his feet, but Dr. Henry explained that the damp, enclosed spaces between the toes were a perfect breeding ground for bacteria that produced an odor. Now, after his shower, he would meticulously dry between each toe, a small but powerful act of self-care. He also started to rotate his shoes and wear cotton socks, a simple change that made a massive difference. He couldn't believe such a small detail could be the source of so much trouble. Walter's new daily ritual was no longer just about hygiene. It was an act of mindfulness. He was no longer just washing. He was healing. He felt a deep connection to his body, a sense of respect and care that he hadn't had before. He knew that the changes weren't just for others. They were for himself. He was shedding not just the odor but the shame and isolation that had come with it. The simple acts were a physical manifestation of his decision to live fully, to embrace his age with wisdom and grace. Walter's journey didn't end in the bathroom. He began to apply the same principles of mindful change to other areas of his life, following Dr. Henry's advice. First, he changed his diet. Instead of relying on processed foods, he began to eat more of the antioxidant-rich fruits and vegetables from his own garden. He ate his famous homegrown tomatoes and strawberries, and he even started adding a small amount of garlic to his meals, knowing it helped fight the bacteria that caused odor. The food felt more nourishing, and his body thanked him for it. Next, he tackled his oral hygiene. Dr. Henry had explained that a dry mouth and a neglected tongue were major contributors to bad breath. Walter had always brushed his teeth, but now he bought a tongue scraper, a simple tool he had never considered before. The first few times felt strange, but the immediate freshness it brought was undeniable. He also began to chew sugar-free gum after meals to stimulate saliva production. His mouth felt cleaner than it had in years, and his confidence in conversation soared. Walter also turned his attention to his environment and clothing. He realized that a clean body could be undone by a smelly home. He began to change his clothes and underwear daily, something he had previously only done every few days. He started to wash his bed sheets and pillowcases once a week, realizing that all the sweat and oils his body produced overnight built. He made sure to air out his house every morning and evening, letting the fresh air circulate and clear the stale odors that had built up. These small, interconnected changes were a revelation. They weren't about fighting his age, but about understanding it and working with it. Walter was learning that life, like his garden, was a system, and every part needed care to thrive. He was tending to his body, his home, and his spirit with the same love and attention he gave his roses. He felt his anxiety melting away, replaced by a quiet sense of control and peace. One Saturday, Walter was working in his garden, a sense of quiet contentment settling over him. He felt lighter, more present than he had in months. He heard the familiar sound of his son's car pulling into the driveway, and for the first time in a long time, his heart didn't sink with anxiety. He stood up, a little nervous but mostly hopeful. Leo ran out of the car and, without a single moment of hesitation, launched himself at Walter. This time, the hug was different. The boy wrapped his arms tightly around his grandfather's waist and buried his face in his chest, taking a long, deep breath. He looked up with a wide, bright smile. "You smell like my grandpa again," he exclaimed. The words were not a critique, but a pure, joyful affirmation. Walter felt tears welling up in his eyes as he hugged the boy tightly, a deep, bone-weary gratitude washing over him. A moment later, Lisa joined them. She didn't open a window or create distance. She simply sat down next to him on the garden bench, a genuine smile on her face. "It's so good to see you back to yourself, Walter," she said softly, her eyes full of warmth. The invisible wall that had separated them was completely gone, replaced by an embrace that spoke 1,000 words. The journey had been a powerful one. Walter had discovered that the most important change wasn't in his body, but in his perspective. He had learned that you cannot fight the natural progression of life, but you can choose how you respond to it. He had to change himself according to his age, not by clinging to the routines of his youth, but by embracing a new set of habits tailored to his current reality. He understood now that life was a continuous process of adaptation and growth, and that true strength lay in his willingness to. The moral of the story was in that embrace. It wasn't about smelling good in a generic sense. It was about smelling like himself again, free from the shame that had separated him from the people he cherished. He didn't just get his life back. He was able to live it more fully, with renewed confidence and an open heart. He was no longer just a man in a garden. He was a grandfather, a father, and a friend, connected to the world and to himself, finally able to receive and give the love he had so desperately. Walter's story is a testament to a simple truth. You can't stop the clock, but you can change how you live with it. A person's character is not measured by their inability to age, but by their willingness to adapt. True aging is about embracing change with grace and courage, reclaiming your confidence, and reconnecting with the life that. Thanks for watching. Hit the bell icon for the daily updates. Please do like, subscribe, and share with your friends.